Dylan Butler joining us.
What's up?
This whole technology thing, it's kind of getting scary. It's like, okay, so for this is TV production down here. I'm used to editing packages in. You can edit in one of two programs, either Avid or Final Cut. One is thinking about it linearly from left to right, and the other has the commands reversed, and you have to think about it going from right to left, even though the timeline goes from left to right. And so, for me, this is like trying to learn Avid after I've learned Final Cut. So it's like, it's all right. So I got to do this, and so if this happens here, it's like, all right. So how does this fit? And go. So yeah,
that's like a Joseph Martinez speaking in English when his head is working in Spanish.
So I know. Yeah, it is out of control. So let's wait. All right, so let's go dealer's choice. Do you want to talk about the 11 games today to start and work backward, or do you want to work backward to work context into the 11 matches for today?
Yeah, the second, I guess, right? That works. Okay. Either way, I'm good.
All right, so let's go backward and do a greatest hits, and so that will get us into what we're looking at here with the midweek whip around. And so let's see, let's go back. Oh yeah, let's start with Austin and LAFC.
Yeah, that was a game.
What in the wide world of sports happened there, man?
I think a couple things happened. We talked actually, right, leading into that game last week about Austin, if they're real, should LAFC be concerned, something along those lines. And yeah, man, like that was they gave us some pretty good scoreline. I think for me the most surprising thing was the scoreline. Not so much that they won, because again, Austin won in LA too, right? But it was the way that they won and how resounding it was that I think, for me at least, opened eyes. And they made a serious. If you weren't sure if they were a Shield or a Cup contender, that was your answer with an exclamation point at the end of it. Austin FC is very much for real. The flip side of that coin now is, are there some cracks in the armor for mighty LAFC? We were talking about the greatest team in MLS history. Can they get to 80 points? Suddenly you start wondering, and Taylor Twellman made a great point on the air, can Carlos Vela and Gareth Bale play together, right? As starters, it didn't look good, at least on that night. So you start to wonder about LAFC, and also it shows you how valuable Ilie absolutely is to them in that midfield, and why he's probably the best, if not one of the best, in his position, because of the holes that were there without him.
Yeah. It seems to me like LAFC just wanted to make moves for the sake of making moves. Hey, look what we can do. We can bring in Chiellini. Hey, we can bring in Gareth Bale. Look at all these shiny toys. And you kind of forget that it has to be a jigsaw puzzle that works. You can't just have pieces lying around off to the side and sit there and go, why does my windmill not look like it's a completed thing here as I'm trying to piece together my 500-piece puzzle on Copenhagen, Denmark? It seems like that they were doing things because they could, and now you seem to have uprooted what got you to where you were.
Yeah, and you kind of gave them the San Jose game as just sort of like a toss away, right? Whatever, no big deal.
Absolutely.
But now if you start to add it together, I don't know. Like they remain one of the most intriguing storylines now for this reason. Are they not going to be that team? And much like we said with the other LA team earlier in the year, and as you said too last week, postseason games are different, right? Like, it's brutal. There's bite to it. Is this team too flashy, right? Do they not have that in them? Because Austin brought it to them, and LAFC didn't respond, not in the way that they wanted. Now, is that the wake-up call that they need? Will they be a different team? And again, you've got to put the Ilie portion into it. as well. You expect, obviously, outside of an injury, that he'll be there in the postseason. But Austin, on the night, certainly they looked to be more of an MLS playoff ready team than an LAFC, right?
Yeah, and that brings me to, I guess, my next underlying point of the weekend, and we saw it with players getting hip checked into ad boards in Austin, and no call, and then you end up with Pat Noonan and colorful metaphors down here.
Yeah.
After hell is real, and I guess let me ask it this way: is Pat Noonan correct, or is he a degree of correct about it being a systemic issue?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think you get this, I think, with every coach in the league, where they think, they're in a fishbowl, and everybody's, all the calls go against them, right? Like, you hear it in so many sports. I mean, think about a basketball game with a coach pointing up at the scoreboard saying it's 10 fouls to 1, it's 10, like, even it out, like. So in that sense, I think it's a degree, but obviously this one point he is 100% right about, right? And it seems to be clear, and that's been certainly talked about ad nauseum, I think, at this point. Just the checkpoints and all that kind of stuff. Like, look, obviously it was an offside call that got blown. He should be concerned also about conceding late, right after Miazga responds right after that goal.
Yep.
You have the lead in stoppage time. You've got to win that game. There's nothing happened with the officials on that last goal, so that's also something that Cincinnati should look in the mirror to correct. But yeah, there's so many things to talk about in this one. I mean, look, and also, by the way, I think it was the first time that I can remember covering a match, because I was doing it for MLS. I wrote up a sidebar on it, that both coaches dropped F-bombs in their pressers. Like, that's not usually, you get one out of maybe 10 games of one coach, but this was both of them. So right. Hell is absolutely real. But another, I don't know if this is the right tangent to go off on, but
we got time. That's all we got, is we got time.
Caleb Porter.
Yeah.
So if you watch the game over and you see the final whistle, what's the first thing that Caleb Porter does? He turns around to the fans. He's shushing them. He's pumping his chest. Like, okay, one, dude, it's not about you.
You're true. That's
two. Yeah. And I absolutely, there's no excuse at all for throwing things on the field. It's horrible. It should never happen. Right? Like, that's period, end of story.
Yeah.
However, if you're in a rivalry game and the game is contentious as you would expect it to be, do not egg on said fans and then say how disgusting it was after. Like, there's got to be a little bit of responsibility taken by a coach. And I didn't see I don't know if there were any antics from his players. I know that they're trying to go to their supporter section.
Didn't Cucho catch a beer and chug it?
Well, that's the coolest part of it all, right? Yeah. Like, he enters legendary status throughout the league and Columbus as well for catching and chugging. But and again, there's no excuse for throwing anything on the field.
None.
But that's not, Caleb, that that's not a good look. That was one of my takeaways there.
And it's not the first time that he's done that. I mean, no. It's been outside of rivalry games where he has felt compelled to shush. And you would like to think, and I know that fans of Crew sit there and go, yeah, he's our guy, and they're behind that when you're winning in these games. But I would like to think that there should be something about presentation and how you carry yourself in these kinds of environments. Frankly, and I might just be because I'm the fuddy-duddy here on the show, and a good fist pump and a handshake and hit the tunnel. I mean, for me,
3 points or 1 point, if that felt like 3, and move on. Absolutely. Or, like you see everywhere else, right? Go to your fans and thank them for making the trip, clap them up. You don't need everything else before that.
No. But he seems to revel in that as part of his persona. But you can't at the same time go into your post-match press conference, call out the other side when you did what you did to kind of exacerbate everything. So it's, I know that you're the coach with the microphone, you're on the dais, you've got your presser, you've got your platform, but I would like to think that maybe there should be just some discretion involved here in how you carry yourself on the touchline in situations like this that could get worse if you continue to do the shushing and all those kinds of things.
That's what I'm saying. 100%.
How big of, well, I don't anticipate that the FedEx envelope heading to Cincinnati will be rather large, but how big a fine and or a suspension do you think Pat Noonan gets for his 2.5 minutes of colorful metaphors down here?
I don't think there'll be a suspension. There'll be a fine. I don't know, $500, $1,000. Like I don't. Maybe something along those lines. I think it's funny. I was gonna say I would think the fact that he was right in the moment about this one situation might save him a few dollars. But it kind of reminds me a little bit of the fines for failure to leave the field in a timely manner during a VAR check that then goes your way. Like it's not like, do you want me to just go in the shower, already, and then come back on the field? Like that one's a little bit of a funny one for me, but it has a similar feel, I think, for me with this one.
Is Seattle done after Portland beat them 2-1?
Yeah, you know what? I will regret saying this probably, but I will say yes. And it's look, I think if this was almost any other team in the league, you would have put that fork in them a month or so ago, right? Yeah. It's because they're Seattle and because they've weathered all these storms that you give them the leeway that you do. But considering, I thought that was like a death match, to be honest. I thought like whoever, if there was a winner, I thought the loser in that match would not make the postseason. Like it was like that old school wrestling, like
loser leave town.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I thought that was. And yeah, I think where they are in the table, the amount of games they have left now, having such a key part of your team and Christian Roldan not being there as well, to go along with your other injuries that you already have. Yeah, I don't think they dig out of this hole. And then I think, and this could be a conversation for a month or so time. What is that reaction in Seattle then, right? Like how do you balance, is it a successful season, right? You don't make the playoffs, and that's usually your barometer for success, but you've also done what no other MLS team has done and won the CONCACAF Champions League, and you're going to play in the Club World Cup. So I don't know, like it's super weird for me, like to sort of, how do you figure that out in terms of, I mean, I guess it's about, what's the most recent thing, and the most recent thing is disappointment for not making the playoffs. And that would change, I guess, in a few months or beyond that for a Club World Cup. But yeah, it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, recency bias always does play a lot into that. But of course, now that we're sitting here and saying that they lost the loser leave town match, next thing you know, Brian Schmetzer and Jordan Morris and Bruce Knuckle coming to town. The next match, they'll all be wearing masks. No, we're not Brian Schmetzer. No, we're not the Seattle Sounders. And then
Or they'll pop up like the Undertaker and that GIF around.
Yes, come out of the coffin and sit there and smile, and then grab the West and choke slam the West for the remainder of the run. As I sit here and look at the rest of the week that was, should we just go ahead and play the over on every Toronto FC match for the remainder?
As long as there are Italians in the match, yes. Yes.
Toronto knocks off Charlotte by the score of 2-0. All right, so I want to say Philly because that'll be more into the week that will be. Nashville seems to be choosing offense for some strange reason recently.
Yeah, and
who are these Nashville people?
It has worked for them in recent weeks, right? Like another huge result for them on the road. BC Place, not an easy place to play at all. And a great result for them as well. I think we've said it before, right? Like form going into the postseason is such a fickle thing where you can't peak too early. You can't go in on a losing streak, or like you need to have some sort of a run up for a successful postseason. And it's starting to feel maybe like that's the case with Nashville right now.
Yeah.
And two, it's been great for them because they're the team that really no one's talking about right now. It's in the West. It's what? LAFC. It's Austin, right? It's even LA Galaxy. Like so many other storylines are there, and no one's seemingly talking about them or concerned about them, which is great for them. They could just come out from the shadows a little bit and do damage. But again, this is a team that's done that as well, right? They know how to play playoff soccer. So they're a super dangerous one as well. And one of my lasting, I think, takeaways from that match was more so maybe sticking with the wrestling storyline, a little stomp there by Lucas Cavallini on Alex Muyl. So not a good look there. And then too, like you're leaving, you walk off, and now you start pumping your chest, like, getting the fans like, come on, dude. Like you just screwed your team. Like, let's not get the fans going now. Right. No. Like maybe you should have thought about that before you stomped on some dude.
Yeah. This is not Seth Rollins and Riddle here. You calm down just a bit. And you mentioned form. This will be the last one before we go into the midweek that will be. You mentioned form. Have you ever seen, when was the last time that you saw a match that was as meteorologically challenged as Orlando City and NYC was after the first goal was scored on the board?
True. But isn't that also every match night feels like in Orlando?
Welcome to summer in Central Florida, yes.
Yeah. Like, should we be surprised that it's raining sideways and it's a waterlogged pitch?
Man, that was wild. But you mentioned form. NYC.
Yeah.
NYC without both Ronnie Dyla and Tati Castellanos seems to be rudderless right now.
Well, you also bring in the other guys too. And I think it's, Tati as the goal scorer, right, gets the most recognition. And obviously when you're not scoring goals, that's big, but they're conceding as well. And you take away a Keaton Parks from your midfield, which he's a huge part, right? Like he's a really important part of your team. It's funny. You liken it to a car, right? Like a Tati is your exterior, right? The shell, the leather seats and everything that comes with that. But like Keaton Parks is very much part of that engine inside that you don't see, but really runs this car. And runs this team. And the same is true of an Alex Callens, right? Like he was for me, at least for a good chunk of the season, probably the best defender in the league, right? A regular starter for the Peruvian national team. You don't just replace that guy. Those are two pretty big losses as well on the injury side for them. So I think when you put all four of those factors together, you start to see a little bit of why they are struggling. And yeah, again, form is super important. They go, if we're fast forwarding now, right? They're not particularly good in their home matches at Red Bull Arena. You can insert your jokes now from that, but this is a big one for them. They've got to get this one against DC just to get, again, form going the right way and turning it. I think a month run up is pretty good for the postseason. That's kind of where we are now. So I think this is a big match for them against DC, where Christian Benteke will be making his debut for the black and red. So that should be interesting.
The Belgian bread loaf. We'll see what happens with Christian Benteke. So turning the corner into the midweek that will be with Dylan Butler, MLSsoccer.com, OSTV Sports. And let's just go ahead and start with the early one, because I know that a lot of folks, it's been taking up a lot of space on the Twitch pitch this morning. We do have Philly fans and Atlanta United fans that have been longtime listeners, and they've been going back and forth this morning.
I'm sure they're very good friends as well.
Well, they've admitted that 360 to 3, and this is legitimately one of the comments, 360 to 363 days out of the year, they're cool with each other.
They are united in their hatred of the Red Bulls.
Yeah, and others. And so, today is not one of those days. And, Atlanta United, coming off of the win against DC, know they're going up against the triple option of formations in Major League Soccer with the 4-4-2. And, Philly has been putting up ridiculous numbers, putting 6 on the board against Colorado. And when you've got Andre Blake between the sticks, you've only given up 20 goals all season long. It is crazy how good Philadelphia has been doing it their way all season long. Let me ask you this from an outside Philadelphia perspective: how do you upset or knock Philly off of their pins and get them thinking about other stuff around them? How do you knock their focus off? How do you beat Philadelphia?
Yeah, well, you don't concede first.
True.
Or early, which that's been a problem for Atlanta, obviously, for the good chunk of the season.
Yeah.
You don't concede off of a set piece because they're such a good team on set pieces. And also, I think you challenge them to keep possession a little bit, because I don't think in possession they've been as dangerous of an attacking team, right? Their moments are in transition, in set pieces. And think about it too. If they score first and early, how much the game sets up for them, right? Because now you've got a team chasing that goal. You could sit your numbers back and then hit them on a counter. And that's so much of what Philly does. So I would say a few of those things are the biggest factors there, right? Like be good defending set pieces. Don't give them anything in a transition, and see if you make them uncomfortable with maybe having more of the ball than they want to have.
So basically treat the ball like it has cooties and just send it long, and it's like,
but they will too. It'll be like a US Open match. Like they'll just go back and forth then.
But if you're, and I think that how many teams, and this might be something that we may not have an empirical answer on, but how many teams are more than happy to stand up to Philly with their nature of how they do things, about being physical and not backing down from challenges and challenging them just as much, and having the rotation of the fouls the way that they do, where it's like somebody's real close to persistent infringement and then someone else picks up the slack. How many teams go mano-a-mano with Philadelphia and are successful with it?
There's obviously the way that they play. The most mirror image is the Red Bulls,
right?
Where they are, again, they're not looking to possess the ball. They're looking to make it a physical battle and try to win those 50-50s and value if they have to. Cincinnati right now a little bit, because they have that Philly ethos a little bit with Albright and Noonan. So they're similar, I think, in that. But then it's and this is one of the reasons why I love this league so much. But then you've got the other teams that have their different ways they want to play, and NYCFC maybe, who want to have more of the ball, and LAFC that wants to have more of the ball. And that's where that chess match occurs, right? Like, pressing a team that wants to play out of the back, and all those sort of games within a game, I think. make it so much fun. And I think that's a little bit what you're going to see tonight as well, where Atlanta is obviously a team that will look to keep possession and go forward with the ball, and Philly will be in defenders' faces and hope for that long ball that they then can win over the top.
What other games tonight are in the Dylan Butler spot shadow? CF Montreal Red Bulls, Orlando Seattle for another death match, Toronto and LAG. Which ones are on your board tonight?
Yeah, big one for me, man, is Toronto LA, because it's the return of Greg Vanney for one, right?
Yeah.
Back to Toronto. So that's super exciting, I think. And Toronto at home have been very good, obviously. Scoring a lot of goals. LA could score a lot of goals. That one could be a 5-3 type of game.
Take the over.
So that one for me is very interesting. Yeah, I like that Montreal Red Bull game too, because Red Bulls are in a good run of form. They've obviously been a very good road team this year, but they don't win in Montreal. So that'll be an interesting sort of a thing. And Montreal, again, being that team that is probably the best team that nobody talks about. So I think another chance for them to show who they are. So that's definitely interesting to me. Orlando home again, so clearly we'll have another major weather situation happening.
Downpour, yeah.
Columbus, Miami is interesting. I think for more post-game sound from Caleb Porter and Phil Neville for sure.
Yes.
I mentioned NYCFC DC about how much of a must-win that is for NYC. And even the last two of the night, I think Austin, Portland is interesting. I think because Portland, maybe they're starting to bounce back a little bit. Obviously, big win over Seattle, but now you've got to go to Q2, obviously not easy, and then Salt Lake home for Minnesota, and Minnesota having the run that they're having too. So I think those two could shape up for some like good MLS after dark action.
Just to let everybody know, when Jarrett and I were talking about this before you came on, we were looking at the totals for or the over-under for Toronto and LAG. It doesn't convert from a negative to a positive until plus 3.5 for your over-under at a plus 118. 4 is a plus 205. 4.5 is a plus 263 in the composite.
Yeah, that's all.
Is there any place with that 4 to 4.5? Is that what you're hunting for right in there for Toronto and LAG?
Yeah, I think you could be looking at a 3-2. So
okay, all right, so there it is. What's going on with you with MLS Soccer and OSDB?
Yeah, I just had a really cool story Monday that dropped. We're right just around the corner from the U.S. Open Cup final, right? And I had a conversation, and the story's up now on osdbsports.com with Lee Desmond. He's an Irish center back for Sacramento Republic. What's super interesting about him, right, is he spent his previous 8 years playing in Ireland, and a year ago, in his last ever match for St. Pat's Athletic, won the FAI Cup. So he goes from winning the cup with St. Pat's. He makes this journey, and he details, why he wanted to make the trip to. He's wanted to for the last 4 years or so come and play in the United States, and now with Sacramento Republic, he's on the verge of potentially another cup final win. Obviously, a much bigger one in terms of being an underdog with Sacramento Republic. So. That's a cool story, and I will give away a little bit of it because I think it's really funny. Okay. So I said, "How much did you even know about USL and Sacramento Republic? Coming from Ireland and and being there." He said, "I knew everything about them." He said, "Because we played on Friday nights, and he said, like any other player, any other athlete, you're just so wired after a game, you just can't sleep, right?" So he said, "What was the only soccer on TV?" He said they had USL on YouTube in Europe, and it's free. So he would watch like every USL game after they played. So like he knew everything about Louisville and Sacramento and like Detroit. Like it was pretty interesting how much he did his homework on the potential move, and and yeah, he talked a lot about what he loves about Sacramento and about his journey this year, um, and a little bit of the feel of what he'll feel like and what he's trying to relay to his teammates about what you need to do going into a cup final. So that was a pretty fun story.
All right. So question for you from the Twitch pitch before you go.
Yeah.
Your last official act. And this is from our Australian viewer, Bam, who is a fan of LAFC.
All right.
And got linked into us. His question for you. Should the U.S. Open Cup do what the Australian Cup does and make the MLS team travel if they play a USL team?
That's a great question. I had two. I feel like I wish it could be like in England, where part of what you win is playing at a venue, right? Like that is such a cathedral, like a Wembley is, right? And it has all that pomp and circumstance. So obviously here they don't. But I do kind of wish that it wasn't an MLS team hosting. I think it needs to be. I think there's so many things, and again too, it's so rare to see a lower division team in this. Usually it's MLS versus MLS, right? So this is a rare occasion where Sacramento is trying to be the first team since the Rochester Rhinos in '99. So considering that, yeah, I wish Sacramento would have been hosting this match. I think it would have. I still think it'd be a great atmosphere. I think it's already sold out in Orlando, so that'll be big. It's their biggest match, and obviously so much is riding on it with the Champions League. So I think it'll be a raucous atmosphere just off of Church Street there. But yeah, I do wish Sacramento was hosting. I think that's a good point.
Yeah, I can't wait to see how many folks from Sacramento make the trip, or how many tickets they were allowed to have. Is it like 100 up in the corner?
Yeah, exactly.
Because I know that Sacramento folks would travel for this one like nobody's business. Dylan, thanks for hanging out with us once again this week. We know that your dossier is full, especially with you and I sharing the high school time. We know that it's high school football. It's the football us and the FUTBOL us. Thanks for hanging out. We'll catch you up next week, my friend.
Yeah, buddy.